But the big news, Kartik, so I watched episodes like 1, 2, and 3, and there's no mention of Phil Neville. There's mentions of how Inter Miami had a poor season before that and a poor record. There's zero mention of US Open Cup, not even a word. And at the end of the episode 3, where they talk about the Leagues Cup and they win the Leagues Cup, and then right at the end, they have a preview for episode 4, which is coming out whenever, weeks or months from now. And the actual teaser for it is like, hey, there's only 12 games to go in the MLS season. We're getting really excited about can Inter Miami qualify for the MLS Cup playoffs. We're going to take it game by game, and that's it, the end. I'm like, wait a second. Like right after that Leagues Cup final victory against Nashville, Inter Miami was right back in it with the US Open Cup.
Yeah.
And not a single mention of it.
Before they played another MLS game. They played a semifinal game that weekend. Midweek.
Midweek, yeah. Right, against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They won that game, which was a fantastic game, and then went on to ultimately lose in the final. So I had a chance to interview the executive producer from Messi Meets America. And I asked him, I said, we'll have a story at worldsoccertalk.com that goes into more detail. I asked him, I noticed in episodes 1, 2, and 3, there's no mention of US Open Cup. So in episode 4, I would expect there would be, all this footage about the US Open Cup and how Inter Miami is really excited to try to win this competition and all the drama that goes into it. Is he going to play? Is he not? And the great game against Cincinnati, a really exciting semifinal. So I said, episode 4 or 5 or 6 does show footage of the US Open Cup, right? And basically he dodged the question and said, okay, well, this documentary is focused on the team, on the club, on the MLS journey. And I said, okay, yes, I understand that Inter Miami is an MLS team, but you have to talk about the US Open Cup, right? This is a documentary about Messi Meets America, about Inter Miami, about the US Open Cup. And the crazy thing is, there's no mention of it. They're purposely, basically what the executive producer said was that the mission he was given was to go ahead and focus on Inter Miami's journey in MLS, and that's it. Kartik, I know a lot of listeners and viewers understand and know why they didn't cover the US Open Cup, but I'll throw it to you. Why would this Apple documentary, Messi Meets America, not even mention US Open Cup?
Because Soccer United marketed and held the media rights to the US Open Cup until last year's competition, 2022. US Soccer pulled those rights back and resold them themselves. And we know, I don't want to go through, it's been aired on CBS. The rights were originally sold to Turner, but CBS is now broadcasting it, but it's not a Soccer United marketing property. For those of you who maybe haven't written or have not read our articles at World Soccer Talk now for a decade about this issue of Soccer United marketing, Soccer United marketing is the marketing arm of Major League Soccer. And for many years, U.S. Soccer used them as their marketing agency. The FMF, the Federación in Mexico, they still use Soccer United marketing, which is why we have Leagues Cup, right? Because Liga MX is kind of married to Soccer United marketing. But because the media rights and the sponsorship rights to the competition are no longer held by MLS, they have no interest in promoting the competition. And in fact, I don't want to get too deep down the rabbit hole, Chris. You could find more on this in previous podcasts or at worldsoccerdoc.com or at Beyond the 90, where my colleague Daniel Forderstein has written extensively about this. The issue of MLS now trying to undermine the U.S. Open Cup in a very public manner has happened. So I think this documentary is part of that effort, because then they're just going to skip from the Leagues Cup final in Nashville, classic evening of football, to the quest to make the MLS playoffs, which means inevitably in episodes 4 through 6, Chris, they will skip the U.S. Open Cup final. which was hosted at Lockhart Stadium. They're going to miss that. They're going to just skip it, which is incredulous if they're trying to do a documentary about that club, about Messi in America, about soccer is not like other sports in the U.S., right? I mean, the same club that competes in Major League Soccer competes in the U.S. Open Cup. Same thing with the USL clubs and NPSL clubs. Same club. It's not a separate. They don't have it's not like the university, Florida Atlantic University, which is down the road from me. It's not like they have a separate basketball team and separate football team, right? Separate soccer team. It's not like that. It's the same club. It's the same players. So it's unbelievable, really.
Yeah, it'd be like the Premier League doing a documentary about Manchester City's last season, winning the treble, and then skipping over, not even talking about the FA Cup, or not even talking about the UEFA Champions League, and just focusing it on Manchester City winning the actual league, and that's it. It's incredulous. I think that's the word that you used. But to me, it's also, in terms of what Major League Soccer is doing here, it's childish. I mean, so Messi Meets America is commissioned by Apple and in conjunction with Major League Soccer. So this is Apple and MLS, putting the money, putting the emphasis into producing this. But to only tell part of the story and to purposely not ignore one of the big stories from this, one of the oldest soccer competitions in the world. 100+ years of history in the United States. And we never mentioned how good of a job that CBS Sports did with the coverage of the US Open Cup final and some of the footage of, yesteryears, going back through the decades as far as...
I guess you won't see that in the documentary, so we're going to have to educate the public about that.
Yeah, I don't know, to me it's childish, right? I mean, look, how would it hurt Apple and MLS to mention, even the episodes 4, 5, and 6 haven't come out yet, so they could always edit them or change them and adapt them if there is a vocal kind of response to them not even talking about US Open Cup. Maybe they'll change it by the time we see episodes 4, 5, and 6. But what's the big deal, right? But I think at the heart of it, Kartik, I think to me is pro-rel. It brings up that ugly topic that a lot of Major League Soccer executives don't want to talk about, is that here we have an open competition, Major League Soccer, which is a closed system, but an open competition where any club from any league in the United States can go through the qualification path and try to get into this competition and go deep into this competition and play against MLS teams, USL teams, etc. And to me, I think that's the heart of it. Maybe it's not pro-rel, maybe it's open system versus closed system. And by actually showing the US Open Cup, it opens up question marks. But I don't know. It's just, to me, it's ridiculous that they even do this. So we even contemplate doing it. Hopefully other people will call them out on it.
Well, they have to acknowledge, I guess, that there are other clubs in the same markets. Like, for example, the club I support, the club I used to work for, Miami FC, we played Inter Miami in their first match of the Open Cup and went to penalty kicks, right? It was really kind of a famous, this goes back to your point about Phil Neville, famous coaching matchup. Phil Neville, one of the Neville brothers, against Anthony Pulis, who was our manager at the time, who was the son of Tony Pulis. That's a great story in itself, but all of that they don't want to highlight. But they would have to acknowledge there's another club in town, in the same town where they have this MLS team. So that might be one of the motivations.
Yeah, it just because what I mentioned to the executive producer, I said to him, I said, this is really bizarre that you have a documentary about a team, about a journey for this MLS club, and part of that journey includes not even mentioning at all the words US Open Cup, and not even talking about coming up the next game and how excited the team is to be playing in basically kind of the semifinals of this major competition and playing into the final. Ultimately, they lost the final. You win some, you lose some, but it's so sad. It's funny. It's so sad. That they would be this juvenile to actually skip that. I still can't believe it.